Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul. I worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul. I worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new day drawing. It's time to sing His song again. Whatever may pass and whatever lies before me, let me be singing till the evening comes.
God's story, David and Goliath. So part of God's story is about the time David fought Goliath, and it begins like this. David was the youngest of 8 brothers. His job was being a shepherd, which meant he spent all day in a field watching sheep eat and roll around the grass. Meanwhile, some of his brothers were off with the Israeli army preparing for war against the Philistines. The Philistines were one of the toughest armies the people of Israel had to fight. So one day, David was taking food to his brothers because his dad asked him to. But when he got there, his brothers accused him of coming so he could watch the fight instead of the sheep. Since David knew in his heart he was just obeying his dad, he didn't mind being misunderstood. Anyway, while David was there, he saw a huge Philistine man, more than 9 feet tall, step onto the field between the 2 armies. He was wearing a thick helmet and armor and carrying huge weapons. His name was Goliath, and he was definitely used to being the winner. David found out that Goliath had been stepping onto the field like this every morning for the past 40 days and saying, "Give me a man and let us fight each other." But nobody from Israel was brave enough to fight him, even the king. Well, David didn't like that this giant was intimidating the Israelites. After all, they were God's special family. And because God was with the Israelites, they could have courage in any situation. So David, who wasn't even a soldier, told the king, "I'll fight against him." Nah, the king thought David was too small, but he really wanted someone to fight Goliath. So he gave in. And David knew he wasn't strong enough to beat Goliath by himself, but he believed God would be with him. So he said, "The Lord will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine." The king hoped David was right. He even had his own weapons and armor put on David, but they didn't fit him. David decided to go into battle in his regular clothes. That's how sure he was that God would help him. Anyway, David went to a nearby stream and chose 5 smooth stones to use with his slingshot. Then he walked onto the battlefield to meet the massive Goliath. When Goliath saw how wimpy David looked, he was furious. He thought he'd get to fight the Israelites' strongest warrior. He said to David, "Am I a dog that you come at me with sticks? I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals." David might have looked like a wimp, but he was actually really brave. In fact, he was so brave that when he was taking care of sheep, he fought off bears and lions. Because God helped him protect his sheep, David knew God would help him protect this special family. David said, "You come at me with a sword, but I come at you with the name of the Lord Almighty." He was explaining to Goliath that God was more powerful than anything. He also added that he would feed Goliath's flesh to the birds, which made the giant even more mad. Then David took a stone, put it in the slingshot, and slung it at Goliath. Goliath didn't even get a chance to swing his sword because the stone hit him right in the forehead and sunk in deep. He face-planted straight into the ground. Nobody could believe it. Then David ran over, took hold of the giant's sword, and drew it from the sheath. He took the sword and cut off Goliath's head. David carried the head all the way back to Jerusalem. And when the Philistine army realized Goliath was dead, they started running away like a bunch of scaredy cats. The Israelites chased the Philistines, shouting loudly. They had won. God used David, who was just an average kid, to rescue his people. And that's the story of David and Goliath. So, in case you missed it, here's the quick version. David was a shepherd. He brought his brothers lunch. He saw Goliath. Goliath scared everybody. David wasn't scared. He knew God was stronger. David fought Goliath. He used one stone. God helped him kill Goliath. The Israelites won. God's people were saved. And that's a part of God's story.
Goliath was a man who stood very tall. David was a boy who was but small. Goliath wore armor and fought with a sword. David's armor was his faith in the Lord. One stone slung just by David's faith knocked the giant down, put him in his place. When the army saw what David had done, they turned on their heels and began to run. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. Goliath was a man who was very strong. David was a boy who knew right from wrong. Goliath bullied people using his size. David chose faith and that choice was wise. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. One stone slung just by David's faith knocked the giant down, put him in his place. When the army saw what David had done, they turned on their heels and began to run. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. Swing, 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 you don't have to be afraid. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave. With God on your side to open up your eyes, you can be brave, brave, brave.
Well, tell the foolish lad to go home. King Saul is no use for jokes out here on the battlefield. Tell the boy.
Tell the boy to come here.
But sire.
Joab, bring the boy here to me. Now. I wonder who he is. I wonder why he's the only one brave enough to fight the giant.
He is, I understand, a giant of a man, and I am This spear appears to be the size of a small tree, and all I've got is a slingshot. This Philistine is large, but I know who's in charge. I have a giant of a God, you see, bigger than the trouble in front of me. And even 9 feet tall starts looking pretty small next to the giant of a God with me. I fought the roaring lion, sent the wolves home crying every time. And with a little faith, I was not afraid. The fight was God's, not mine. This Philistine is large, but I know who's in charge. I have a giant of a God, you see, bigger than the trouble in front of me. And even 9 feet tall starts looking pretty small next to the giant of a God with me. I have a giant of a God, you see, bigger than the trouble in front of me. Even 9 feet tall starts looking pretty small next to the giant of a God with me. Next to the giant of a God with me. I have a giant of a God with me. I've got a giant of a God. Giant, giant, giant of a God. Giant, giant.
So that's the little hero?
Looks like he couldn't fight a flea.
Make way for the little giant killer.
David was not afraid of Goliath, the enemy army's biggest and best fighter.
David believed in God, declaring boldly that the battle was the Lord's.
1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 32 through 51.
You come to me with sword and spear, but I come to you in the name of the God of the ranks of Israel, whom you defied. But on this day, Jehovah will deliver you into my hand. It's not by sword that Jehovah saves, for the battle is the Lord's, he will prevail. Then all our shame will be turned away, and all the earth will know there's a God in Israel. The giant rose and came to fight, and David hurried running to the battle line. He chose a stone with 5 in his sack, and slung it quickly at that giant just in time. Goliath tall and the giant fall. Brave David won that day with just a stone and sling. Their giant dead, the Philistines fled, and Israel chased them that whole day far, far away. You come to me with the sword and spear, but I come to you in the name of the God of the ranks of Israel, whom you defied. But on this day, Jehovah will deliver you into my hand. It's not by sword
Or shield
that Jehovah saves, for the battle is the Lord's, he will prevail. Then all our shame will be turned away, and all the earth will know there's a God in Israel. The giant rose and came to fight, and David hurried running to the battle line. attack and slung it quickly at that giant just in time. Goliath tall and a giant fall. Brave David won that day with just a stone and sling. Their giant dead, the Philistines fled, and Israel chased them that whole day far, far away. And Israel chased them that whole day far, far away.
Hello children, how are you? Today I'm here to read your story about David. David in the Bible, in the Old Testament, 1 Samuel chapter 17. David and Goliath. And today I'm going to read you from this book. David and Goliath. One day, young David was looking after the sheep when he heard his father's calling. "Take this bread and cheese to your brothers," his father said. His father, David's 3 older brothers, were away fighting in King Saul's army. Taking the bundle, David set off at once. King Saul's army was camped on a hillside. On the other hillside, the Philistine army had gathered. It was an amazing sight. David searched among the lines of Saul's soldiers. He soon found his 3 brothers. Just then a giant soldier stepped forward from Philistine army. He was so tall, he towered over everyone else. He roared, "I am Goliath, tall and mighty. Who is brave enough to fight me?" Not one of King Saul's soldiers replied. They were all afraid. The soldiers talked among themselves. "The king will give a big prize to whoever kills the mighty giant Goliath," they said. "What's going on?" young David asked his brothers. "It's nothing to do with you," they said. "You're just a boy. Go home and look after the sheep." But David did not go home. He went to see King Saul in his tent. "I will fight the giant," said David. "I have killed a lion and a bear that tried to attack my sheep," said David. "I was not afraid because God looked after me." "But you're just a boy and he's a mighty giant," said the king. King Saul gave David a helmet, armor, and a sword. David put them on. They were much too big. He tried walking around the tent. "I can't wear these," he said. "I am not used to them." Clink, clunk. He took them off again. Instead, David took his sling and his pouch and went down to the stream. There he found 5 smooth stones and put them in his pouch. "My sling was all I needed to fight the lion and the bear," he thought. "God will look after me." David went down to meet Goliath. The giant towered over him. He roared, "I am Goliath, tall and mighty. Who's brave enough to fight me?" "I am," answered David. "Will you fight me with that stick?" sneered Goliath. Goliath was angry. Goliath lumbered towards David. David grabbed a stone from his pouch and put it in his sling. Goliath waved his sword in the air. David let the stone fly through the air. The stone hit Goliath in the middle of his forehead. Crack! He crashed to the ground. King Saul's army cheered. The mighty Goliath is dead," they cried. the Philistine army ran away, chased by King Saul's soldiers. Young David was a hero. The end. You see, children, David had a lot of experience, but he did not depend on his experience. He depended on God. He said, God will look after me. Okay? In Proverbs 3:5, the Bible says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. You see, the world will say to you, depend on your own ability. But the Bible says, do not lean onto your own understanding. Trust in God. He will give you the confidence. So our confidence comes from God. Thank you. God bless you. Bye.
David was a kid, watching sheep was what he did, and he did it very well every day. He kept the sheep safe and sound when the lions were around, and he kept the wolves at bay. And then along came a day, all the people were afraid of the Philistine army coming round. They had a giant on their team, very hairy, very mean, and every day he called them out. He said, you're weak and you're chicken and you're scared. Boop, boop. And for the next 40 days he dared. Every day he would call for the best. But nobody thought they were up to the test. 'Cause he was bigger than the biggest, and taller than the tallest, and badder than the baddest of them all. He was rougher than the roughest, and tougher than the toughest. But David had a friend in God. Told him, get a rock, take a shot. Think you're little, but you're not. I'll help you do what you have to do. You're a whole lot bigger 'cause you're mine. Now get ready, aim, and let it fly. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. You can take him down if you have to. So David volunteered, and it seemed a little weird. He was little after all, kinda small. But with God on his side, he paid no never mind to the giant who was super, super tall. 'Cause God is tougher than the toughest, buffer than the buffest, and better than the best of them all. So with a stone in his slingshot, David hit the right spot, and boom, the giant went down. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. You can take him down if you have to. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. All you ever have to do is ask him. He was the little guy, but God was on his side, and so he knew he'd be okay. Okay. Knew Goliath was a giant opposition, but he took him down anyway. Nothing high, nothing wide, nothing any shape or size can stop him. Nothing big, nothing tall, nothing any size at all can keep him down. He's a whole lot bigger than your mind. Now it's ready, aim, let it fly. One rock, one shot, one giant's gonna drop. You can take him down in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. And you are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are here, touching every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, healing every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, turning lives around. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, mending every heart. I worship you. I worship you. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. And 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 that is who you are. You are waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Even when I don't see it, you're working. Even when I don't feel it, you're working. You never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop never stop, you never stop working. You never stop, you never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Never stop, you never stop working. Waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You never stop, oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You never stop, oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. You never stop, oh, waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, light in the darkness. My God, that is who you are. Never stop, who you are. That is who you are. That is who you are. And that is who you are. That is who you are. And that is who you are. And that is who you are. And that is who you are. Bless the Lord, oh my soul, oh my soul, and worship His holy name. Sing like never before, oh my soul, and worship Your holy name. The sun comes up, it's a new